I came home every day alone, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. So, and plus I had to have the house completely cleaned and dinner on the table by the time my mother came home from work, and my dad we never saw him very much because he worked and he provided for his family. So when Peter and I chose to start our practice together, there wasn't even a question. We were going to have a home practice. Mm-hmm. And my idea was, when we had this baby, I was going to have this baby and go back into the practice in 2 weeks. And, look, there's an alarm. Bedtime for Peter. And I was going to put her in a backpack on my back and go in the office 2 weeks later. And what I realized was, you never know the spirit that's going to be given to you. And this spirit didn't want me to go back into the practice. This spirit wanted me to stay home with her for 6 months. That was that spirit. Just totally, the beauty was that I was in partnership. Thank God we were both chiropractors, because I don't know what I ever would have done if I was a single chiropractor on my own. Who would have taken care of our patients? And Katie came along 3.5 years into our practice. So if I had a practice on my own 3.5 years, built up, pretty successful and all, and what would I have done? I don't know. I don't know if I would have had a practice. So our kids were always an integral part of our life, in our practice. Our patients, you go into our practice today, and there are people that go, Katie, I held you when you were a baby. Christopher, you were running around naked in the office once. I still remember that day. We have stories that we never would have had if we had a 9-to-5 job, and that we never would have had if we weren't practicing together. And then bringing our children with us to every event we went to every seminar we went to in chiropractic. We wanted our children, as you'll see in the stories in this book, people wanted their children to follow in their footsteps. And we did. And we didn't care if they were chiropractors. We wanted them to be passionate we wanted them to find some passion in their work, which we certainly have. We wanted them to experience the ability to know that they could create anything that they wanted in their life, that they could stand up in front of a crowd and be able to speak without, having the fear of dying like most people have. Actually, people fear public speaking more than they fear dying, is what I've read. And so to have created these 2 children, adults now, who have all those qualities, to see Katie stand in front of a Toastmasters group and just totally blow them away, blow the senior speakers out of the water with her abilities. So to know that they really did, they followed in our footsteps, and that could not have happened if we weren't a couple in practice, and with a home office, and with a vision, a passion, a purpose, and as we said before, at the bottom line is that the common denominator is the love that we shared for each other that got expressed through our children and through our practice. Our practice was our first baby. Mm-hmm. And it still is our first baby, and it always will. But you will always be our first, most wonderful, favorite baby. So I think that kind of sums it up. And, Peter and Patty's names could have been next to any one of these other couples' names in here. We all had this, in reading this, it's like we all had this shared experience that you experienced when you interviewed everybody. And I feel blessed to have been part of that.
Could I just add a story to that?
Sure.
2 minutes.
That was actually a perfect story that goes with it. I think one of the pieces, which actually dovetails on what Jeffrey just talked about, is as much as we had set the boundaries of our home and our practice, saying that when we're in the threshold of the house, we're wearing the mommy daddy hat, we're there caring for our kids, and when we're in the office, we're wearing the doctor hat, and we really try to honor that. And our kids would call us on that. if we got a phone call when we're in the office, it's our time. And
No, when we were in the house.
when we were in the house, the kids
Yes.
would call us on if we were, we were trying to wear the doctor hat when we were in the house. And every once in a while, though, even though we would always have caretakers for our kids, when the two of us were in practice, the kids, being kids, would come pulling each other's hair, running, or Christopher stole this, or whatever it was, and they come running into the office, and they're doing the kid thing, and we would have to change roles from being chiropractor to being mom or dad. And patients would actually get to witness that phenomena. And to see that to me was as healing as it was being the doctor or caretaker on that level, to see the congruency that we maintain with our philosophical space, and to hold that space of being a parent and yet still being the same being and holding the same honor of the bigger picture. So.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
There's one other just brief story that kind of just segues nicely onto what you said. And one of the couples we interviewed described their young adult daughter calling one day in tears and saying, I don't know what I want to do with my life. It's like, I can't imagine finding work that I love as much as you love the work that we're doing together.
Mm-hmm.
And was just incredibly bereft because she saw what her parents had created as the ideal to strive for.
Right.
But she hadn't figured out yet what it was for her.
Right. Can I just quickly piggyback on that? That we were at a chiropractic conference once, and the spouse of a chiropractor got up and said, my son just graduated from business school, and he's been out in the business world, got a job for 6 months, and he came to them and he said, Mom and Dad, I am not experiencing the same passion and excitement that you guys have shown us in you practicing all these years. I decided I'm going to be a chiropractor because that's the only thing that I think is going to bring passion to my life. And he is a chiropractor now, and their daughter is a chiropractor now, and they practice with their dad. It's like,
And
that's
do they
Jay's
have that
picture.
passion?
And they do. They
Oh
are
my God, yeah.
amazing,
Right.
amazing,
Mm.
amazing
Wasn't
chiropractors.
So, let's continue. Chapter 6, Soul Support, Encouraging Talents and Growth. And Dr. Peter is up now.
So when you look at the soul support, it's first recognizing what the soul is. I mean, what is that essence, that vital aspect of existence that transcends the physical, that is that beingness, over which is the unconscious and conscious and the physical realm, but what is the soul? And in my opinion, why I chose to speak to this space, or this topic, was it is probably the essence as to what holds us together and holds us in terms of success, is really honoring the soul spirit that Patty has, that I have, and that we have with everybody in our lives. It is the most intimate space that you hold. And what does intimacy really mean? When you play on the word, is into me I see. Each being, each soul becomes a mirror back to us of who we are, how we show up. And we reflect back to that person the magnificence of who they are. And it's that synergistic process of honoring the soul that brings healing. And as healing occurs, the soul strengthens. That healing is honoring, and honoring is healing, and healing is honoring, and honoring is healing. And that cyclical process continually builds and builds and builds with every relationship and every communication. So it is that soul spirit that drives us, and drives our philosophy and expressing that philosophy. And everything that we do in our practice, and the passion that's there. And within that, to really honor how each soul wants to express themselves. When Patty and I were first together, she saw me as, Peter's the one that can speak. Peter's the one that likes being out there. And so she would always make herself second to Peter going off and doing what she thought Peter was good at. Well, as time goes on, Patty finds her own power, and she starts speaking, and she starts sharing, and sharing her soul and her spirit through her needs. And it was a beautiful process for us, I think, to honor and witness that as I got to support Patty in doing the same thing that she had supported me in. And to honor now in when we were first in practice together, we would practice all the time, and then kids came along, Patty left the practice, and I took over the whole deal. And then Patty comes back into the practice and starts taking over probably the most critical part of the introduction of people into the practice. And, you know, as a new person comes in, educating them, and there's nothing that Patty's soul expresses herself better at than to connect with people, and to really honor that connection process, and to allow each person that comes in to have their soul honored, and their being honored without judgment, without controlling, without manipulating, and just to allow that person to come into the space. So it's really, I believe, that soul support that drives everything that we do in our lives. And to you know, look at each other and sometimes see the quirks and the idiosyncrasies that normally we never argue.
No.
Maybe in the 30 years we've had 2 arguments,
Discussions.
conversations.
I'd say like 8.
Okay, 8.
You guys get back on the same page a lot, though.
You know, and it is totally driven by coming back to the big picture.
But we don't
Yeah.
argue because you're always right.
You learned that really early.
I learned that very quickly.
Yeah, Patty learned early on that there were 2 ways that things were done. Either the wrong way or Peter's way.
There's one couple that I need to introduce you to.
Alan and
about-
Catherine at the end of the chapter
Not
of soul
Alan and
support.
Catherine, I'm thinking about the Chans, where they said they have fierce arguments. He's Indian and she's Polish.
Oh, good.
So we got 2 strong cultural traditions. And they argue, and they never, neither of them ever agrees to be right, that, you know, that the other's right. And they just end the argument at some point, and they go on, and love each other.
That's cute.
And,
But you
and
know what?
they know that it's like they honor that about each other and respect that about each other, and it doesn't stop them. They don't get caught up in like there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, but there's actually a lot of health in that. When you're running a business, you make a decision when you're running a business, what is the right thing to do for the business? You know, should we advertise, should we market, should we invest in this? What's the right decision for the business? So often in personal relationships, you get this polarity where, well, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and when you look at a relationship, you say, hey, the way to build a healthy relationship is you're thinking for the relationship. You're taking that seminar healthy for the relationship. Go and do that, healthy for the relationship. Is this action healthy for the relationship? So when you look at the relationship, you make the honoring decisions for the relationship. And then extend that into the business, what's the honoring decisions and choices for the business? So it's really following the thing and the family and looking at the bigger picture rather than the
You know, one way to think about it is there's 3 votes. There's a vote for you, there's a vote for the there's a vote for the relationship.
So looking at the whole of relationship, and how we have to talk about intelligence that heals the body, makes the body, is the same intelligence that brings all relationships together, all life experiences together. The same thing that holds the stars in the sky, let your balance checkbook. But that intelligence is there, and that it's all perfect design. That every conflict, every issue is an opportunity to connect further to spirit. Every scenario, every situation that occurs, whether it's to us personally within the practice, with our kids, is an opportunity to connect more to spirit. And the more that we connect to spirit, realize that it's in that loving space, healing occurs in our lives, and our level of intimacy, and how more intimate we can become with our practice members. I mean, we all have had challenges. Those challenges are often the opportunities to create more intimacy, more connectedness, more integrity, more
partnerships with local and global impact. And for this, we'll have Miriam talk to us.
Well, I think it's perfect coming after what you said, Peter, because I can build upon at the core is love. At the core is love of self, love of one another, love of our children, love of our communities, love of the people we work with. And the contribution has got to come out of that source, and the source of the connection to the larger universe. And one ways in which, I experience it, in addition to in a loving partnership with Jeffrey and with Noah and with my family, my extended family, and my chosen family of friends, is I want to give the example of Our Bodies, Ourselves, because I assume that you all are familiar with that book, and that I was one of the founders and original co-authors. And when we started out to write that book, we didn't start to write a book. We started with me and some other people having questions about the birth control we were giving and the medical care we were not getting. And so it started out with a personal question that got connected to other people who had similar questions, and kind of it opened up from, we did research and papers, and a book came out of that. One of the things that I learned from that whole process was you start with yourself, and you take this, it's like without knowing what the next step is, and the next step will come. And in the process of working on that book, originally back in '69 and '70, and even now through the editions that I haven't been so involved with in the writing of, is we understand that we made a global impact. We altered the conversation about women's health and sexuality out of our own personal passion and our own personal need to know for ourselves and our family. And so it's like I understand, if I take that now to the world of business and to this book, one of the things that I'm committed to is sharing the inspiring stories, because it opens up relationship for everybody. It opens up possibility for everybody. It opens up the boundaries of how things are supposed to be between personal life and work life. And it opens up those questions so people can make choices, powerful choices for themselves. This is not, being a couple in business has its downsides, as we've talked about. It's like if you're in the midst of a difficult business cycle or a difficult time in your relationship, it's hard to be apart because you need to work things out with one another. But it opens up the possibility of, as Patty was saying, about having your children nearby when they need you, and also getting a chance to, as that other couple whose son went from business school into chiropractic, really choosing powerfully a work direction that has a personal satisfaction as well as a contribution to the world. Mm. So, one of the things that I hope very much about this book is that it allows people to have the kinds of conversations that we're having tonight, and to have what bring in what you brought in, Beth, saying, I'm thinking about business with my husband, I was scared, and now I'm interested in reading these stories. And I trust you'll find in the stories inspiration and maybe even some answers for yourself.
I think I'll find some questions.
And more important than the answers are the questions.
Yeah. You Jewish?
Yes. Much more to say about this.